Imagine this. You find yourself trapped in a dark, almost claustrophobic hallway. The floors creak beneath you, the walls seem to shift, and the shadows linger in every corner, twisting and reaching as if they have a life of their own. There's something deeply unsettling here, a feeling of dread that wraps around you like a cold fog, creeping underneath your skin. Each time you reach the end of the hall, you're back at the beginning, reliving the same moments over and over and over again, as if it's a nightmare. You're locked in a loop you can't escape. This is PT, or Play teaser for the game Silent Hills that was never released. What was meant to be a short interactive preview has since become a monumental place in horror history, inspiring countless theories and then leaving an indelible mark on the gaming world. Released in 2014, PT introduced a new concept in horror games. Rather than sprawling levels or expansive environments, PT combines players to a single looping hallway, a setting so ordinary that it becomes the perfect backdrop for horror. By placing players in a familiar space and slowly twisting it into something sinister, the game creates a psychological experience that leaves an unforgivable impression. With a collaboration between legendary game designer
Hideo Kojima,
I don't know how to say his name, I'm sorry, and acclaimed filmmaker
Guillermo del Toro,
I don't know how to say his name either, PT promised to take horror in a new direction, blending cinematic techniques with psychological terror. Though the full game was never completed, PT itself remains a work of art, a haunting experience that has taken on a life of its own in years since its release. At its core, PT is a short, experimental horror game that distills horror down to its purest elements. Released by Konami under the guise of an indie game studio named, I don't know how it's pronounced, but I'm just gonna say 7780s, PT offered a little exploration or backstory upon its release, leaving players to discover its secrets through gameplay alone. The experience is simple but haunting. You awaken in a dark basement, open a door, and enter a hallway. This hallway is where the game unfolds. As you make your way down to its dimly lit path, eerie sounds and chilling visuals begin to chip away at your sense of safety. Doors creep open on its own, light bulbs flicker, and a radio in the corner says some strange, disturbing broadcasts. The hallway is initially ordinary, bare, clean walls, a few frames, and a digital clock clicking on the shelf. But as you make your way through the seemingly mundane environment, the game begins to change. What starts as a familiar space slowly becomes a prison, twisting into a surreal nightmare with each loop. Subtle changes start to appear. The clock ticks forward, sometimes backward, creating a sense of disorientation, like a frame falls down or a window breaks, or these little itty-bitty pieces of a photo of some strange woman. Who knows who she is? Every time you loop, there's gonna be a small, disturbing detail. What makes PT stand out is its restraint, unlike other horror games that rely on jump scares or grotesque monsters. PT emphasizes the psychological aspect of fear. The game doesn't need to throw anything directly at the player to induce terror. Instead, it lets the dread build slowly, making each step more difficult as the atmosphere grows heavier and heavier. The entire experience feels like a gradual descent into madness, capturing the essence of psychological horror in a way a few games have managed to achieve. The concept of endless loop is central to PT's horror. The player walks down the hallway, turns a corner, and opens a door, only to find themselves back at the start. This cycle repeats over and over and over, but with each loop, the atmosphere shifts, creating a sense of paranoia. The loop is disorienting, making you question your perception of time and space. Initially, each loop is familiar, even comforting in its predictability. But as the game processes, small changes add up, distorting the environment in subtle, terrifying ways. This repetition builds suspense as players come to expect that something will change, but they just don't know what or when it will. Each cycle adds a new layer of horror, making the player feel trapped in a nightmarish loop that can't escape. It's as if the hallway itself is alive, shifting and reacting to the player's movements, hiding secrets just out of sight. The loop becomes both a prison and a character of its own, one that toys with the player's sense of safety. The hallway is no longer just a setting, it's an antagonist, an entity that grows more hostile and strange with each passing loop. By forcing players to retrace their steps, PT forces them to confront their fears head on, creating an experience that is both oppressive and immersive. This cycle taps into a deeper psychological fear, the fear of entrapment, the inability to escape, to be forced to relive the same terrifying moments over and over creates a sense of powerlessness. I don't know if I said that right, sorry. The hallway becomes a metaphor for trauma, a place where the player is forced to confront their fears repeatedly, unable to break free. It's the cyclical natures that makes PT more than just a horror game. It's an exploration of psychological distress, trapping players in a situation that reflects the cyclical nature of fear and anxiety. And then there's Lisa. She's the spectator that haunts the hallway, a ghostly figure with a twisted, hollow face and empty eyes. Unlike other horror game antagonists, Lisa isn't there to attack or chase the player directly. Instead, she lingers in the background, appearing at the edges of players' visions, a constant looming presence. She might be glimpsed standing at the end of the hall, or you might catch her in a reflection in a mirror watching you from behind. Her appearances are brief but deeply unsettling, leaving players with a sense of unease that lasts long after she disappears. The character of Lisa is a tragic figure, one whose backstory is hinted at through the environmental storytelling. Radio broadcasts and disturbing clues found in the hallway suggested that Lisa was once a mother and a wife who met a violent end. Her tragic story is conveyed indirectly through the cryptic messages and the unsettling imagery, leaving much of her narrative up to the player's interpretation. The fact that Lisa's story is only partially revealed adds the mystery, making her figure both horror and sympathy. And one of the game's most terrifying moments, Lisa's ghost attacks the player, creating an experience of true horror. The screen shakes, she scares you, you scream. Right. But Lisa is more sad once you understand her story. She was just a housewife with a husband, 2 kids, and an expected kid coming soon. But her husband lost his job.
You got fired, so you drowned your sorrows in booze. She had to get a part-time job working a grocery store cash register. Only reason she could earn a wage at all is the manager liked how she looked in a skirt. You remember, right? Exactly 10 months back.
And so she had to pick up a job at a grocery store, and her husband just snapped one day and killed the family.
We regret to report the murder of a wife and her 2 children by their husband and father. The father purchased the rifle used in the crime at his local gun store 2 days earlier. This brutal killing took place while the family was gathered at home on a Sunday afternoon. The day of the crime, the father went to the trunk of his car, retrieved the rifle, and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch.
Our society is rotten to the core. I'm talking to all the fine, upstanding folks got their welfare cut, got their jobs pulled out from under us. You know what to do. Now's the time. Do it.
When his 10-year-old son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot him too. His 6-year-old daughter had the good sense to hide in the bathroom, but reports suggest he lured her out by telling her it was just a game. The girl was found shot once in the chest from point-blank range. The mother, who he shot in the stomach, was pregnant at the time.
Her first, then the other 2 kids, then he offed himself, which is just something, man. I honestly don't know how to change over to this next segment about talking all this stuff, but yeah, it's something. Lisa's story is a real tragedy. Even though it's not real, it feels sad. I don't know. Let's just move on. PT's narrative is woven into its environment, with every detail in the hallway adding a piece to the larger puzzle. The pictures on the wall, the ticking clock, the scattered toys, and even the seamlessly random radio broadcasts all contribute to the story, creating a world that feels real and lived in. One of the most disturbing symbols is in the bathroom sink, where a fetus lies crying as if it wants you to help it. This disturbing image hints at the themes of loss and trauma, creating a visceral scene of unease disease that lingers throughout the game. Then there's a red refrigerator hanging from the ceiling, dripping blood as it swings back and forth. This gruesome sight adds to the sense of horror, hinting at the violence and tragedy without spilling it. These objects serve as a visual metaphors, each one telling a story that the player must piece together. This kind of story requires the player to be an active participant, encouraging them to look closer and to pay attention to every detail. It's a subtle but efficient way of creating immersion, making the player feel like they're part of the narrative. And I honestly like that type of stuff. I'm into that. Can you hear it in my voice? I'm really fucking into this shit. Anyways, the environment in PT is more than just a backdrop. It's a reflection of the game's themes. The hallway represents a space of unresolved trauma, a place where memories and emotions are trapped, looping endlessly. The player isn't just exploring a physical space, they're delving into psychological landscape of a tragedy, piecing together the story of a family torn apart by violence. This approach to storytelling is rare in horror games, making PT a unique and powerful experience. The ambiguity of PT's story has led to countless theories and interpretations. One popular theory suggests the hallway represents purgatory, a limbo where the player is trapped, forced to relive the events that led to Lisa's death and the death of her family. This theory is supported by the game's repetitive nature and the sense of environment that provides the experience of each loop. And each loop represents a step in a cycle of suffering, a punishment for the tragedy that occurred within the family. The player is condemned to wander the hallway, facing the consequences of their actions, unable to escape, which means that we're most likely the husband of Lisa, reliving the tragedy that we did ourselves. Another theory sees the hallway as a representation of trauma. Sorry if I slur my words sometimes, I'm talking too fast. A space where memories and emotions are frozen in time. Each loop through the hallway is a journey through the mind, revisiting the moments of pain and horror that the player can't escape. This interpretation suggests that PT isn't just a horror game, it's a metaphor for the psychological impact of trauma, a reminder that some experiences can haunt us forever. In the end, PT isn't just a game, it's an exploration of fear, trauma, and the human psyche. Its impact goes beyond scares or shock value, delving into psychological roots of horror in a way that few games have never even achieved. By tapping players in a single hallway, PT creates a sense of dread that is both immediate and lasting, making it a masterpiece of horror that continues to haunt the gaming world to this day. But too bad it never released. I am actually so sad that this game never released, because I'm learning about it for you guys and I'm like, yo, this game is dope, where's the full game? It's not there, it's not out, it's not a thing. I hope one day we get something like similar to this, or if there is something similar, let me know. And yeah, that's it for me. I'll see you guys next time I have a video ready. I do have videos like in the works, I just need to actually work on them. I do have ideas, I have a lot of ideas. Like if you could see in the community post, I have like a COD video that I want to do, and then an Omori, and then a kind of documentary type of video I want to do, but those are gonna take a while. Please be patient. I hope you guys stick around and see what I have to make later on. And yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.